For a practice paper 1, or for a real paper 1, and we're going to make it as authentic as we can in here, you're going to get 4 sources on one topic within this move to global war. So what kinds of topics could you be asked about? Manchuria. What else? Germany. Yeah, German aggression in the 1930s. Yes. Italy, Italian aggression, the Abyssinian crisis. All of these things are good. The Munich conference. You could be asked specifically about that. German rearmament, Neville Chamberlain and appeasement. All of these are topics that we could cover. Japan becoming a militaristic and nationalistic power. These are all things that could be covered on paper 1 of your IB exam. So you are going to be given 4 sources. And you're going to be given 5 minutes to read. During your reading time, you have no ability to write at all. No pens or pencils during your 5-minute reading period. I encourage all of my students to first go to the questions and look at that first question. And that first question, it's actually going to be called 1A for you. That first question, 1A, is going to tell you to look at one of the 4 sources. And let's say our topic is about British appeasement. All right? So all the sources deal with the British appeasement policy from 1935 to 1939. All right? Question number 1A will tell you, what does source D say about the reasons, or what does source D say are the reasons for Britain supporting an appeasement policy in the late 1930s? And it's going to be a 3-mark question. It's going to be a 3-mark question. So we want to read that document and find 3 things that it actually says about reasons for the appeasement policy in the 1930s. Here's the nice thing about paper 1. When we get to the end of the year, I'm going to tell you guys not to really worry about studying, going back and revising and studying all of this old stuff. Because the documents themselves will jog your memory. Okay, if you kind of forget, if you even forget the name of the Munich Pact, it's going to be in the documents. So they're going to give you a lot of that information. It's going to make it easier for you, right? So you're going to read that document, and you're going to hunt for 1, 2, then 3 reasons for the British appeasement policy, right? And you write them out in just one big paragraph. This is a 1-paragraph response. You don't even need like any introduction or topic sentence at all. I would just say this. According to source D, the reasons for Britain's appeasement policy were this, and this, and this. That's it. 1 paragraph, maybe you break that up into a couple sentences so it's not a terrible run-on, but that's it. You may use direct quotes from the source, but if you quote directly from the source, make sure you put it, after that you write a sentence or a phrase in your own language that shows the reader that you understand what you're writing about. Because we can't give you points if we think you're just throwing darts at the document and pulling random samplings out. All right? That's question 1A. This is a 3-mark question. You got about 2 to 3 marks for each, 2 to 3 minutes per each mark. So for this first question, you got about 5 or 6 minutes to handle that. 1B. This is a 2-mark question. This is the one that's always going to have you look at that political cartoon or map or picture or image of some sort. And it is going to say, what is the message that source B is trying to convey about the appeasement policy of Britain? And maybe it's some cartoon. I'm making this up. I don't even know if this exists. But some cartoon of a Neville Chamberlain looking guy, and he's got a British flag on his back, and he's walking blindly towards a cliff. Right? And the rock face that he's walking on has appeasement policy written on it. And you're going to have to look at that cartoon and find 2 messages that artist is conveying, because it's a 2-mark question. I want you to give me a message. The first message. The artist believes that Neville Chamberlain is not able to clearly see the trouble that lies ahead. This is shown because he is a blind man with black glasses and he's walking with a cane. So I'm going to show the message, and then I'm going to show how it's being, like why I'm seeing that message. That is really important, because when the readers get their papers and when they're grading, their mark scheme doesn't always have everything on it that you could answer correctly. So we want to make sure the readers give us the points where we have earned it, right? And then I got another sentence. Another message of this drawing is that the appeasement policy is going to fail. The appeasement policy is destined to fail because we see this blind man almost walking over a cliff, and he is going to meet his doom at the bottom of that cliff. All right? So we show the message, and we show how we see that. 2 marks, you got about 4 to 5 minutes to handle that one. So total for question 1, you should be knocking that out, hopefully, in about 10 minutes. Okay, question 1 is the easiest task you have to do on paper 1. Get all your marks. Question 2 is your OPCVL. Based on and they're going to tell you to go to one source. Look at source B. What are the values and limitations of source B based on its origin, its purpose, and its content? So for origin and purpose, you're looking at the source citation. Everything for origin and purpose comes in the initial source citation. Who wrote it? When was it written? What is their job? What is the title? Was it a speech? We know the purposes of various speeches or whatever. All right? So that all comes from the source citation. Content comes from the actual content itself. All right? I want this one to be 3 paragraphs. This does not have to be like formal narrative essay style, though. Like, you got to write in sentences, but you don't have to like give an introduction or anything like that. I would start off my first paragraph. This is my origin. That's going to be my purpose. That's going to be my content. In my first paragraph, I would say, source B comes from a book called The British Appeasement Policy, 1935 to 1939, written by Dr. Ronald Fumplesticks, who was a professor at the Liverpool Academy of Fine Arts. He's not a professor there anymore. He retired, but he was good when he did work. Yeah, he's done now. But anyway, so you're going to lay out what is the origin. You're going to actually write out what is the origin. You're literally copying from the source citation. And then you're going to hopefully give a value and a limitation. This source is valuable because Professor Fumplesticks is an expert on international relations of the 20th century. He has a PhD, he's a professor, or whatever. All right? Or this book is valuable because it was written in 2003, which means that he has got 70 years of other histories and documents that were found and that he could build his modern history on. Cool? It may be limited, however. It may be limited because let's say, because he is a professor at the Liverpool Academy of Fine Arts, that is not a school that is necessarily noted for its historical excellence or something. I'm making this up. Don't mean to denigrate the Liverpoolians Fine Arts School. But you try to come up with a value and a limitation. You do the same for the purpose. You explain. The purpose of this book is to explain the British appeasement policy from 1935 to 39. We can usually judge the purpose of a book by its title. All right? It is valuable because it's going to have a ton of information about this very narrow subject. But maybe it's limited because it doesn't give us the context of what came before. Maybe not a lot of talk of World War I. What came afterwards? What's the result of this appeasement policy? So hopefully we come up with a value and limitation. And then same thing for content. What actually in that source that we can actually read with our own 2 eyes is valuable for a historian studying this? What might be limited? What might we want a little more of? All right? One note. It is not a limitation if a source is translated. We're not going to count. You all speak English. We read English. There's going to be other better limitations than things getting lost in translation. One other note. These sources are all shortened up for you so they can fit them on an IB exam and you can read it in time. So you're going to see a lot of ellipses, 3 little dots, where the editors have taken stuff out that you don't need to look at. Don't fall into the temptation of claiming it's limited because they pulled stuff out and we don't know what it is. They're only doing that to make it shorter for you. So go with the content that is there. What is valuable about it? What's limited? Now, you do not need to have a value and a limitation for each of these. This would be optimal. What you do need to have is O covered, P covered, and C covered, and then a V and an L. So you could be value there, limitation there, and value there. And that would be acceptable, and you would absolutely do fine. Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Is it worth it to try and put in a for limitation of for values?
It's a catch-22. Like, if you know it's bad, if you know it's a stretch, but you've got all the bases covered, then I wouldn't waste your time with it, because you're still under a ticking clock. You gotta get this done. All right? This is a 6-mark question. This is a 6-mark question. So you got about 12 to 15 minutes to do that. All right? Question number 3. Question number 3 is your compare and contrast. You're going to be given 2 sources, maybe sources A and C. In what ways are they similar? In what ways are they different? The question will always ask, how are sources, compare and contrast source A and C, compare and contrast the views about the appeasement policy in sources A and C. So we are focused exclusively on the content of those 2 things. I don't care that A came from a British guy and C came from a German guy. I don't care about that. I care about what they actually say in their source. I need to know the views of them. We're going to set this up as 2 paragraphs. Our first paragraph is similarities. Our second paragraph is differences. First paragraph is similarities. So I'm going to use language like this. Both A and C, both sources A and C say this about the appeasement policy. Source A says this, which is similar to source C that says that. And then in my differences paragraph, I'm going to say, however, there were differences between these 2 documents, or these 2 sources. For example, source A says this, while source B or C doesn't say that at all. Or source A makes this argument, while source C says the opposite. Source A says France was in support of this. Source C makes no mention of France whatsoever. You can have as a difference, one source doesn't even acknowledge the existence of the other idea. Coolio? That is a 5-mark question. That is a 5-mark question. You got about 10 to 12 minutes to knock that out. Question number 4 is a straight-up essay. But by this time, 10 minutes, maybe 25 minutes, 35 minutes, maybe 40. You've only got about 20 minutes, give or take, to write your last essay. It is going to be a straight-up essay question, kind of like what you might even put on an EE, right? According to the sources and your own knowledge, it's going to say something like this. According to the sources and your own knowledge, why did Britain adopt an appeasement policy from 1935 or 1939? Okay, maybe you won't. I'm making this all up right now. Maybe you'll get it in May, though. So according to the sources and your own knowledge, you need to use all 4 sources as evidence. And you need to pull in something from your own knowledge bank. That could be anything that you know about the topic, as long as it's not already mentioned in the sources. Okay? So let's say they mention nothing about Winston Churchill being in opposition to the appeasement policy. You can mention Winston Churchill, that there was some opposition. Yes?
Will we be penalized if we don't put like an introductory thing for the question 4 set out? So just went straight into
Yeah, it would be a weaker essay. IB cares about how well you write. So this is how you're going to do it. You ready? You guys ready here? It's not rocket science. In fact, let me erase it and make it bigger. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, I like this. You guys saw something like this back when you were probably in 7th grade, right? No? Something like that. This is the start, not a conclusion yet. We may or may not have time for that, and we'll be okay without that necessarily. This is the start of a traditional 5-paragraph persuasive essay. That is all you are writing, guys, is a persuasive essay. You're trying to answer a question with your own knowledge to persuade the reader that you are right? So we're going to have some intro sentence. You were told back in the day that this had to be some kind of like attention-grabbing sentence, right? We want to grab the reader's attention. Here's the reality. Your IB reader is getting paid to read your papers, all right? He's going to read it. So you don't have to get super creative with this. Here would be my introductory sentence. In the late 1930s, the British government adopted an appeasement policy towards Germany. Period. Just laying out what the question is about, right? Then, let's say the question is asking us, what were the reasons for this appeasement policy? I would then continue. There were a number of reasons that Britain adopted this appeasement policy. First was this, blah, 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 blah. And what can I say first? First, they wanted to avoid a war. Second, blah, 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 blah.
They didn't care that much.
Germany wasn't like, yeah, Germany violated the Treaty of Versailles. Doesn't matter. We want to do business with you. We want to be friends with you. Okay. And then the third reason was blah, 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 blah. Public interest. The support of the public was not for war. So I am going to lay out in my introduction what are my main 3 ideas, maybe 2 ideas, maybe 4 ideas. And then each one of these main ideas becomes a topic sentence for each of my body paragraphs. So my entire first paragraph, it might only be second paragraph, it might only be a 3 or 4 sentence paragraph. My entire first paragraph is about that first reason. And maybe source B supports that idea. So I'm going to say, my first idea was they wanted to avoid war. Source B is from whatever politician who was talking about the horrible memories of the First World War and how that future wars should be avoided. All right? And then I'll maybe give a little bit more. I've got some prior knowledge I can work into there. But I'm going to explicitly mention source B and pull some information out of it. Then my second one becomes my second topic sentence, and I go on and on. My third one becomes my third topic sentence. I've got to, within these ideas, within these main ideas, use all 4 sources and some piece of prior knowledge. There might be that one source that's a little tricky. Usually it's going to be the source that's linked up with the compare and contrast, because these are going to give you 2 maybe opposing ideas about a particular topic. Still got to use that information in there. So maybe in my last paragraph, I will have, there were some politicians, like Winston Churchill in source C, who said that the appeasement policy was not a good idea. However, he was severely outnumbered by the Labour Party and even other conservatives in his own political party that believed in the appeasement policy. Cool? If you have time, you conclude it. How do we conclude it? You restate your thesis and you end your paper. This is going to be, what did I say? These are new numbers here. So we've got 5 marks, 6 marks, that's 11, and another 5 is 16, and then 8 more for your final essay. 8 more for your final essay for 24 marks total.